We are a nonprofit. We're student run and youth founded. We were founded about a year ago, and our general mission is to bridge the gap between community and the law in promoting legal literacy amongst the community in various forms. One of the forms is through legal literacy workshops like this. And Mr. Helfing has agreed to be the lead to today's workshop surrounding essential law for small business. So without further ado, I'll turn the attention over to him.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Elizabeth. I really appreciate you giving that introduction and allowing me to help with your organization, Right to Thrive. It's fantastic. And again, I appreciate the opportunity. And any opportunity to help people is fantastic because people think the law can be hard to understand, unavailable to them, and that's not the case and shouldn't be the case. So I'm glad that you have this organization and glad to help out any way we can. Today, we're going to be talking about essential law for small businesses. And I hear so often that, oh, I don't need a lawyer, I haven't spoken to a lawyer. And I get that all the time. People need to understand their rights, need to understand their options out there and how to protect themselves. People just don't do that ahead of time. Much like yourself, Elizabeth, I was speaking with my son earlier today, and we were just discussing how people don't come to lawyers until it's too late. Oftentimes, we like to call ourselves problem solvers when we can, but we're usually here to bail people out. Not just out of jail, but out of a situation. And that doesn't always have to be the case with proper planning. If you do things properly, you get things done ahead of time, you can alleviate a lot of these problems that spring up. But things are going to happen, and you still need to talk to a lawyer when a situation arrives. But planning ahead of time is a lot easier than putting out the fire afterwards. Because even if you're able to put out the fire, you're still going to have damage, and no one needs that if it can be avoided. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about things to consider when you're running your small business and options that are out there for you. Okay, so let's get into it. And afterwards, we'll have question and answers, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. So let's go. Let's see. There we go. So today, what we're going to talk about is one, finding an attorney, selecting an attorney. That's more important than you think. Rather than just opening up a web page and trying to find somebody, you got to find someone you like, someone that understands you, someone that you can understand them, which is very important. Then we're going to talk about creating and selecting business forms, how to run your business. And again, this is a big overview, but these are still things to consider. Then, in addition to your business, you might have a great business, but what you're really protecting are your trade secrets, your intellectual property. So we're going to discuss that as well. And then if you have a partner or employees that are very important, you need to have a buy-sell agreement or other plans in place to protect yourself from the partners and the insurance. From your employees. Finally, we're going to have employment issues and how to handle that as well. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right. When you're looking for a lawyer, you want to interview lawyers, evaluate them, right? You might get recommendations from a friend, from another business colleague. Maybe you saw a commercial or an ad on the internet. But you definitely want to interview these attorneys because you want to make sure that they can handle your needs, that they understand what your needs are, and not just say, oh, you have this issue, here's the Band-Aid for it. Well, maybe they didn't dig deeper. Maybe there's some other symptoms that you need to evaluate, other situations about the business that they need to understand. And if they don't want to take that time, find someone else. And then retain that attorney, okay? Once you find an attorney you like, retain them. Make sure that you have them on speed dial if you need it, or you have an understanding that they're there to help you when you need it and to go forward. But that's very important because you'd be surprised how many people pick the wrong lawyer for them. It's very true the saying, birds of a feather flock together. And you see that in the legal industry too, where one client's personality does not match up with the attorney's personality. And you think that that shouldn't matter because you're just providing a service. You want your car to have its oil changed, you need someone to go ahead and change it. It's that simple. But having a lawyer is not a simple commodity. It's a true service, and they are an invaluable partner of your company. So make sure you find someone that you really, really gravitate to. And because oil and water don't mix, and it's the same when you have attorneys that don't want to feel the same as you. So find that attorney, then retain them. All right, now you've got your attorney. Let's go on. What do you need an attorney for? Well, you've got a business. So many times people run their business in their individual name. That's called being a sole proprietor. The problem with being a sole proprietor, which can be just fine in some cases, but depending on the nature of your business, the more exposure to liability, the more exposure to potential risks, the more exposure to potential lawsuits, the more you want to have a business entity, which is going to create a limitation on your liability. It's going to improve potential tax considerations. It will even potentially survive you so that you can pass it on to a partner or a family member, and the business yet continues. And you have your legal formalities that you got to maintain and the expenses, but that's a separate part. But maintaining those business formalities is important, because if you're running your business as sole proprietor and something terrible happens, unfortunately, it's going to spill from the business and into the personal lives. So I've had so many clients that have come to me, or potential clients, because they didn't come to me earlier, and they had a catastrophic loss. I know one instance where they had a very successful business running a restaurant for over a decade, and were just crushing it, just doing so well. And then catastrophe hit. And I said, okay, well, there might be some things we can do. Let's see, how are you running this? Is it an LLC, corporation? Let's look you up on the Secretary of State, make sure that your business is in good standing. And they said, no, we're not running this as a business. We're doing this in our individual name. Okay, well, let's see if we can get you to your insurance carrier and see what they can do to help you. Yeah, they've denied the claim. And they did. And they wouldn't honor their claim. And I said, well, the next thing I can do, without giving you all the details of this case, because it's a little bit more than time that we have, I said, but the only thing I can do now is refer you to a different lawyer, and that's going to be a bankruptcy lawyer. Because this catastrophic loss is going to spill into your personal life, and you don't have these millions of dollars to back it up. So they're going to take your home, and they're going to take what potential savings they might have had that's not protected, like some qualified savings might be protected, but they basically lost just about everything because they're running it in their individual name. And I see that all the time. So you want to have a company that's going to create this umbrella, this protection layer over you. And that's what a corporation does. That's what a LLC can do for you, a limited liability company. They can provide these protection of an umbrella to protect you. Problem is, you also have to maintain these formalities, which we'll get into in a little bit. Otherwise, we do what's called piercing the corporate veil, and we still go through that. But for the most part, if you keep everything together, and unfortunately you have that catastrophic loss, well, they might be able to take the assets of your business, but they're not going to go into your personal assets, which is significant. Why are you working? Why are you working if you just want to give it away? You want to protect what's yours. So make sure you truly protect yourself and set up that corporation or LLC. All right. Now, most times when people come to me, they say, oh, I want to set up this LLC. I want to set this corporation because I want to save money. I don't want to pay more taxes than I have to. No one does. Right? I get that. That's where you hire an accountant. And if they can save you money and if they can reduce your taxes, which some of these entities can do for you because you can take different deductions than you would as a sole proprietor, fantastic. That makes me happy, but that's not my job. My job is to make sure that your liability is contained, that your exposure is reduced. All right. So saving money, saving taxes, fantastic. Let's do that. That justifies the money, maybe setting it up. Actually, well, hardly, because setting it up is far, far cheaper. You'll save much more money in taxes anyway. But that's the icing on the cake for me. All right. And then having one of these corporations or having a limited liability company does give you the ability to keep your company running in perpetuity. And that's important. You want to maybe pass it on to a family member. You have partners. And if you're running as a sole proprietor and you die, everybody does. We have no guarantees here. And you will die. We all do. Your business will end. And then what? If Bank of America, if the CEO passes, Bank of America doesn't shut down for a month or 6 months and grieve. Say, sorry, our CEO died. We'll figure things out. We'll get back to you. We're so sorry. No, someone's going to step in right away. All right. That continuity is significant, right? Death will happen, but there's other things in life. What if you just want to retire? You've worked hard in your life. You want to retire and you want to sell the business. You want to pass it to your partner. You become disabled, right? So there could be a lot of things that happen in life that you need to prepare for. And that continuity of life will be much easier by setting up a company. All right. And then, of course, running the legal formalities. We'll get into that. All right. What do you pick? All right. Well, first you want to have a good company name. It doesn't have to be, the company name and the corporate name do not have to be the same as your trade business. I could be ABC Holdings running a franchise of McDonald's. It doesn't mean I have to open up a company that says ABC Holdings. They'd just be doing business as. So picking a corporate name is important, but it doesn't have to be the definitive solution for your corporate name, for your trade name, okay? But do pick a corporate name, one that is, of course, available. The Secretary of State's not going to allow you to pick a name that someone else is using. So you're going to have to pick an individual name that's unique, all right? Then you're going to file your articles of incorporation or organization, depending on whether it's an LLC. And this is where we get into some of the formalities. A lot of people say, why should I pay a lawyer to set up my limited liability company? Why should I pay a lawyer to set up my corporation? I can go to the Secretary of State's website and fill out the form, and it's only $125 to start. And that's true. That's the filing fee. It's $125. Not too bad. That's the start of the process. But that's also the start of the problems if you don't maintain your corporate records, your company records, and those legal formalities. What are they? Having bylaws. Bylaws are a document, manifesto explaining how to govern your company, not how to run your business. It's not an operations manual. It's how to run your business from a governance standpoint, how to allow and elect officers, board members, issue new shares, what to do if someone wants to leave or sell their shares. So you want to have bylaws or operating agreement. Then you want to also have annual meetings, okay? You keep your corporate records. Your bank account has to be separate from your individual, your personal bank account. Don't commingle, because then it looks like it's the same person again. We want to avoid the appearance of what we call an alter ego. That's just my alias. No, the reason you get this great corporate and company protection over your head is because you're saying, hey, that company over there is separate and apart from me. That's totally different. What happens there doesn't concern me and doesn't spill over into my personal life and my personal assets. So long as you maintain these formalities, you keep your books separate, you keep your bank accounts separate, you have your bylaws and operating agreements, your meetings. You keep all these records separate, Because if you don't, then we pierce the corporate veil. We say, you know what? This is just their alter egos, their alias. Disregard that company name and let's go straight to their personal assets again. So again, why did you set up a company name? Earlier I said, why'd you set up a business if you just want to potentially give away your assets and your personal assets or savings? But now, why why go through the process of setting up this company and then not maintain it so that later gets disregarded and we take your personal assets again? And I've done that. I've worked both sides of this, where I'm protecting a client and I'm going after someone and piercing their corporate veil and going straight to the personal assets. Again, I'm working for my client. And if I can do that, I will. And I've done it. So it happens. Don't let it happen to you. All right. Now, you've set up your company. You've got this great business. You got to protect your trade secrets, because what makes your business different than someone else's business could be why I'm coming to your business. Otherwise, going back to McDonald's, if I'm running, McDonald's has their own intellectual property, of course, protected for good reason. They don't want Burger King now having their own Big Mac. They might have something similar, but it's not going to be a Big Mac, right? Because that's important. Chick-fil-A's got a fantastic chicken sandwich. Now that's going to be different than Kentucky Fried Chicken or KFC's chicken sandwich. What happens in your business is different than someone else's, and that's why I'm coming to you. All right. So make sure you're protecting your intellectual property. That could be recipes and sauces. That could be procedures. It could be your system. It could be your inventions, right? It could be a patent, it could be a trademark, it could be a copyright. It's what you're writing, it's what you're doing. So this is what makes your company so important and valuable. You need to protect it. You need to protect it not only just by registering your trademark and patents with the United States Patent and Trademark Office, but it might also be making your clients sign confidentiality agreements that they're not going to give away your recipes to someone who just comes by. They're not going to use it for themselves when they leave. I mean, how many times? Well, I know I've seen it. You've probably seen it too, where someone says, hey, I liked working for you. This has been great, but you know what? I think I can do this better, and I think I can do it on my own. So I'm going to take your playbook and open up my own shop. Wait, what just happened? I spent 3, 4, 5 years training you. Now you're taking my best stuff and open up your own place. Maybe you allowed that to happen. Maybe you didn't protect yourself. So talk to your lawyer, see what you can do to protect your intellectual property, because in the end, that's all you have. So no one cares about your pots and pans or your ovens or anything else. They don't care about your file cabinets in the back or your computers. They care about what you do and what you provide. And you need to protect your systems and whatever else you have that separates you from your competitors. Okay? So very, very important. Make sure you do that, and do it sooner than later. Because if someone else runs to that patent office and tries to trademark something, you have an uphill battle to say you had it first. Because if you had it first, why didn't you patent first? Why didn't you trademark it first? And why didn't you protect it? Because if I just put it out there, anybody can see and use it. So protect it, then put it out there. All right. Now this goes back to what I was saying earlier. Great. This is part of the continuity, but this is also about having maybe protecting your employees, but also giving you an option to get out as well. So let's say you go in with a partner and you run a business. We see it a lot of the time. A lot of people have fantastic ideas about how to run a business. They want to start it up, but they're cash poor. Happens all the time. I've got a great mousetrap. I've got a new light bulb I want to do, but I don't have the money to develop it. I don't have the money for research and development. I don't have the money for marketing. Okay. Sally, Fred, come on over. I want to introduce you to this idea, and I want you to become a partner. Great. That happens all the time. Sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. But when you do bring in a partner, it's so important to have a buy-sell agreement, also called succession planning. You need to have a plan in place, because what happens if someone wants to leave the company? You might want to retire. You don't want to be a slave to this the rest of your life. You eventually want to go and enjoy your time. You worked hard. You deserve it. They want to do the same. They might file for bankruptcy. Now, all of a sudden, you've got lots of creditors potentially coming down your way because of your partner that you didn't expect. They might go through a divorce. IRS is one creditor, but an angry spouse can be even worse. So even a divorce is a good reason to have a buy-sell agreement, because what if you and your partner are doing really, really well, but your partner and his or her spouse are not doing well? Maybe because of the business. Maybe your partner is spending so much time on the business that they're ignoring their spouse, and their spouse is angry, really, really angry, and they get a divorce. They say, you know what, I want all that money, or I want the business. They don't know anything about the business or how to run it, and you don't want an angry person in your office. So one thing to do is to say, hey, if there's a buy-sell agreement, I'll tell you what, I'll let you and your spouse duke it out. You fight all you want, but I'm going to buy out your interest. Now the company is all mine, and you guys can fight about whatever money you may want to fight about. That's up to you. Okay. So you have death, you have retirement, you have bankruptcy, you have divorce. You also have disability that you got to prepare for. What happens if your partner becomes disabled? You were counting on that person. Now you got to hire somebody to fill their role. So you got to pay your partner, and you got to hire somebody. So now you're doing two. So typically what you do is you have some disability insurance perhaps, or you buy them out over time, and you become the 100% shareholder of the company. Very, very important. And then finally, what if you do want to just sell, right? You want to retire, you want to sell the company, but you've got, again, some people that are running your company. You can't be at the business all the time, so you hire a fantastic manager, and that manager is doing a fantastic job, but you don't want them to leave. So you incentivize them, and you get a key person insurance policy, which protects them in case something happens to them and you got to hire somebody. So these are things that you want to consider, because eventually you are going to want to sell your company. You are going to want to get out. And people don't think about that until they actually want to get out, and then it's almost too late. You got to think about these things ahead of time. All right. Okay. All too often, people do things by handshake. Oh, they told me they were going to honor this. I know them. They're always trustworthy. They've been great. Contracts aren't there to beat someone over the head with. People think that a contract is scary, and oh, now you're trying to scare me, trying to intimidate me. Contracts aren't to beat people up. Contracts are there to share information, to share responsibilities and obligations, so people know and understand what their obligations are when there's an issue. Oh, I want to retire. You want to retire? Well, let's go see what our bylaws say about that. Okay. Oh, I want to sell my shares. Okay, well, let's go see what our bylaws say about this. Okay, this is the process. And this would be the same whether you're going through a lease, you're going through an employment contract, or anything else. Make sure you paper it up. Because I'll tell you later on, not only do people forget, people will ignore at a convenience. They will change their memory to suit their current needs. And you don't want that to happen if you had a contract in place, you can go back to and refer to it. Okay. So vital, but so often ignored. And sometimes out of expediency, we just need to get it done. We don't have time for this. We'll do it later. No one ever goes back to do it later. It just doesn't happen. So paper it up, get it done right. Let your lawyer know what your specific needs are. I can't tell you how many times clients have said, hey, I need a contract just to say, we want to give options for stock. For what purpose? What length of time? Will there be a vesting period? Does it vest automatically? Any number of things. They think that we have these documents that we just spit out. We just pump it out. Here you go, put your name in it, it's done. Yes, we work from some templates, but to some extent, they're very generic. What we then do is take them and we customize them for you. And what we do is significant. And I can't tell you enough. If you don't tell us what your specific purposes are, why you want this, we're not going to give you the best service that you need so that later on, it's there for you. If you think that we know everything about your business, I will do whatever I can to understand your business, but you live your business. I'm hearing you for the first time for this 30 minutes, 60 minutes, maybe a follow-up, right? Maybe I come visit your business. Fantastic. But you live through your business, so you know it well. And you may think I know it as well as you, and I don't. So be clear when you speak with your lawyer about what your needs are, what you want to see happen, what you're afraid might happen. Okay, because then we can get back into it and add certain provisions and contingencies to deal with those needs, with those concerns. Okay, so very, very important. Don't overlook having good contracts in place. All right, having said that, I'm going to say one more thing before we move on to the next subject. Yes, get it papered up. Yes, have a contract, but please let a lawyer do it. Don't do it yourself. All right. Might be better than having zero, but it's not your strength. Let someone whose strength it is to prepare that for you. And we used to talk about LegalZoom and other things that had contracts there for you to sort of fill in the blanks. Okay, again, better than maybe nothing. Now we got ChatGPT and other things. And I've got clients all the time coming to me say, Ken, I'm selling my business. It's going for $10 million. And the other side has proposed and drafted a purchase agreement. I had ChatGPT looking at it. What do you think about this? And I'm like, well, it's not bad, but I can see that I still have a job for a few more years at least because it's not ideal. Okay, so don't rely on ChatGPT. Use it for knowledge, get an understanding, use it as maybe a foundation of understanding, but then go to the lawyer for the definitive work. If I'm not feeling well, I might Google, what does it mean if I have 103-degree fever and I've got these spots on my body and I'm, dehydrated? Might mean you have the flu, might mean you have chicken pox. Which do I have? So it tells me something's wrong, but then I got to go see a doctor, really. And that's the same thing with a lawyer. We're juris doctors, and that's what we're here for. So leave it to the professional, but I do encourage you to get some understanding, absolutely. I think that's great, so please do. All right. Employment issues. Now, this is where a lot of people struggle, right? They have it for a lot of different reasons, whether they want to hire or fire someone. They don't understand the process of why they can fire someone or things that they can and cannot do. Hugely important. Depending on the business, you may or may not have to have a written contract for them when they're hired, but I would encourage you to do so no matter what. Again, you might have someone who you think's working in the back of the restaurant, right? And they're not privy to some of the knowledge that you have. They don't have all the trade secrets. So you think, but then later on they do. And you didn't have them sign a confidentiality agreement, a non-compete agreement. And before you know it, the person you thought was just sitting in the back has now got hold of all your trade secrets, stuff that we told you to protect earlier. So if you don't have a non-compete agreement, you don't have a confidentiality agreement, that person who is I don't say $10 an hour is, well, it's pretty low these days, I guess, even today. But not to make light of that, that $10 person an hour tomorrow is opening up their own shop. And maybe their business is going to do better than yours because you didn't protect it. So try to get things in writing when you hire somebody, and do it when you hire, not later, because it makes a significant difference in your legal rights. Okay. Employee compensation, how much do you pay? How is it done? Right? Is the employee compensation based on hourly wages or salary? Is it tied to a percentage of the profit? Is there some ownership or some shares, some options? It just depends on the nature of the business, but that might be something that goes into your employment agreement, right? You don't want to leave that up to chance later and people's memories, again, that people will forget. And our clients forget. Our clients forget all the time. And, I hate to say it, but it's kind of like a saying in the industry, your clients lie to you. And I think that when my clients come to me too. And I don't think that they do it because they are mean, they're trying to hide something from me. It's because they wear what we call rose-tinted glasses. They see things from their perspective, and they forget the other side's perspective. Oh, she hit me with a frying pan. Wow, that's terrible. Why did she do that? Well, I threw a couple beer bottles, but that doesn't come up until later. You find that out. Well, why didn't you tell me that? That's pretty significant. Now we're in trouble because, you've got the smoking gun here. So clients have a way of forgetting things too. All right. So have those things in place. All right. Unemployment compensation, we always worry about that. Is my unemployment rate going to go up because I fired somebody? Maybe. But sometimes that's the risk. And I've had to do that myself. You have to worry about that. You have to worry about that. Did someone need to be fired? Well, if they need to be fired, I'm going to let them go. If I have to pay additional unemployment insurance as a result, so be it. But I'm not going to take the risk of having someone in my business that doesn't need to be there. And I've made that determination. And when you make that determination, this is just kind of general business knowledge. When you make the determination to fire somebody, you should just fire them. You should just fire them when that decision is made logically. Don't base that decision based on emotion, okay? Because when you're angry, and I can be angry for a lot of different things, you're not making a good decision. You're not thinking with your higher brain. You're thinking with your core, and that's not what you want. Think it through, but when you've made that decision, that's the time to fire. That's when you do. All right. Covenants not to compete, so important. People think that they have North Carolina as an example. It's a right to work state. Yes, it is. But you also have the right to give up the ability to work. I cannot force you to work for me. That's, indentured servitude, slavery. I can't force you to work for me. But I can force you to not work for someone else if you have a covenant not to compete. All right. And that could be very important. You might be the best quarterback out there and I'm going to pay you a lot of money. But if you want to break your contract with me, I'm not going to let you go to someone else. All right. You might have trade secrets of mine. Coming back to the small business, you might have trade secrets of mine that I don't want you to take to another company. I can do that. I can do it so much so that even if that person doesn't work for them, their spouse can't go work for them. They can't sit in the back making coffee and whispering into someone's ear, go talk to Fred. This is what you say to them. I know we're charging $20 an ounce for whatever we're doing, but if we just charge them $18, we'll get the business. No. So you can tie their hands pretty good so long as it's reasonable. Okay. It has to be reasonable. Reasonable in three things. Reasonable in time. I can't say they can't compete in this industry for the rest of their life. That's not fair. It has to be reasonable. Usually 1, 2, maybe 3 years but somewhere between 1 and 2 years is very, very reasonable. I have to make it reasonable in location. I can't, if I'm running my business here in Charlotte, North Carolina, I'm not in Raleigh, I'm not in South Carolina, I'm not in California. I can't say you can't work anywhere. You are forbidden to work anywhere. That might be unreasonable. If he wants to go work in Minnesota, New York, San Francisco, Dallas, Miami, let him go. Go ahead, have at it. I don't have anything to protect there. It's not my business there. But if it's reasonable, I say you can't do it within 25 miles, within the county, maybe the state, possibly. So it has to be reasonable time, location. And the third thing, which is often forgotten, this is why I said it's very important to do it at the beginning, whenever possible, is that you have to give adequate consideration. Because while they do have the right to work and the right to give up that right, they have to be compensated for that. Well, I don't have to take this job. I can go work for someone else who's not going to tie my hands like this. Okay, go for it. I want to make more money if I'm going to give up my right to make potential money in the future. Sounds fair to me. I'll give you some more money. So they have to have adequate compensation. That's why if you do it after they've already been hired and you say, hey, I just had this great seminar with Ken Helfing. He says I should have a non-compete. I need you to sign this. And you don't give them additional consideration, more money, more time off, more insurance, more benefits, whatever. You don't give them something significant. You say, you either sign it or you don't come back to work tomorrow. That's pretty big. That doesn't fly with the court because that's not additional consideration. That's the same consideration they already had. So you have to give them something new. Now, when we talk about independent contractors, that's also a big deal. For the employers, oftentimes they don't want to have what they call a W-2 employee. They want to have a 1099 independent contractor. Why? Because I don't have to pay their employment taxes, FICA and such. And that could be quite a bit of savings for the employer. However, that shifts the tax burden to the independent contractor, and that independent contractor is responsible for paying those taxes. All right. The problem with that is oftentimes they're not independent. They're their employers, and you as the employer, as their boss, are exercising all sorts of control. You're telling them when to arrive, when to leave. You're not letting them work anywhere else. You're not letting them hire or fire people to work for them. You are giving them the tools, the equipment. So the more touching you have, the more control you have over somebody, the more that person shifts from being what you thought was a 1099 independent contractor to an employee. Now, that means the IRS can now come after you because you're paying this independent contractor just for their work, but you're not paying taxes to the government. That's not good. When that independent contractor gets fired and then files for unemployment insurance and benefits, the state's going to say, you're an independent contractor. They never put in any taxes in for you, unemployment insurance. You're on your own. Now you've got an angry former employee who turns you in for this. And then not only does that Department of Labor or the IRS come back and look at you for that employee, but they're probably going to look back 2, 3, 7 years for all of your independent contractors or employees. And you can be hit not just for the damages of that one person who's disgruntled and angry and mad at you, but for all the others. And that's significant. So if you're really running a business and you have these independent contractors, make sure they're truly independent. Make sure they're truly independent, because if you're exercising control, it'll come back to bite you. You don't want that. All right. That's about everything for running the small business. This is really a quick overview. There's a lot to be considered here, and each business, each industry has their own little things that you have to consider and go through. So my suggestion is to reach out to your lawyer and talk to them. Make contact with. I was telling my son again that people don't call us when things are good. It's like the police. No one calls us, hey, I got a raise today. I'm so happy. I just want to tell somebody. They call the police when something bad's happening, and that's where we get all this pressure. Talk to your lawyer. Talk to them regularly. Just call and say hi. He or she's not going to bill you just to say hi, and say how your business is doing. Yeah, it's kind of like a checkup. Just go do it and let them know, because there might be things out there that you hadn't considered, that they haven't considered, and that you both could talk about and go through. But every industry is different, and every business, even the restaurants from one to another, is different. So while we have general knowledge of the industries, we still want to know your business in particular. So please speak to them. Okay, that's about it for this overview of the essentials for small businesses. And I'd be happy to take any questions that anybody might have, whether Elizabeth wants to moderate them, or if you have questions that you want to ask by text or chat, let me know.
Yeah, so
if anyone wants to pipe up.
yeah, again, now can be a good time for questions. I can go ahead and start us out with sort of a warm-up one. So if given sort of the changing world with like AI and all of these new technologies, how do you think sort of business law will be affected by these changes?
Well, that's a good question. AI is, of course, changing everything, right? Even lawyers are using AI to do a lot of their work. We've had AI appear in Supreme Court, good and bad. It could be a fantastic tool. It could also, what they say, hallucinate and make up cases that don't exist, which is kind of funny. Even still, I read these reports that says, hey, this news article was written by AI, which might also be inaccurate and contain errors. Well, thanks so much. So I see AI helping quite a bit. I see it helping the individuals quite a bit too. One thing I like to think about myself is that I'm very plain speaking. I try not to talk above my clients, which I should never do anyway. But if I start speaking in Latin, how's that going to help you? Right? So you need to be able to understand what I'm telling you. Otherwise, there's no benefit to you at all. I think AI helps with that as well. It speaks to us in a conversational mode for the most part, in ways that we understand it. Speaking, languages. AI can speak in multiple languages where a lawyer may not. So that also helps to bridge the gap of understanding. I see AI helping quite a bit. Ultimately, I hate to say it this way too, and I keep harking back to my kids, but I think AI is going to replace lawyers in not too long. There might be some instances where a lawyer is needed, but I think ultimately speaking, AI is probably going to end up replacing lawyers, doctors as well. So it's going to happen. I think for now it's bridging the gap of understanding, and I think that's great. And eventually, I think it'll probably end up replacing lawyers, and it'll be even more accessible to individuals and small businesses.
Well,
good question.
that's right.
It's most lawyers don't want to hear that, but it's coming. I believe so anyway. Well, it have a significant impact, if nothing more.
Okay, so turning now to the wider group, if any of you have a question, just feel free to unmute and share out.
But before you ask the question, I'll need a credit card and I need to start my clock. So let's go. Of course, I'm joking, but all right. Who's got a question?
So I have a question.
All right.
So it's about when you talk about the business and forming a business, I really
Yep.
found it really interesting because my dad also has a business, and it was kind of interesting knowing how what's the process of forming one. And my question is, between an LLC and corporation, how
Yep.
should someone decide which one is better for them?
Well, that is a very good question. Okay. So there's a lot of differences and a lot of similarities between a corporation and an LLC, a limited liability company. Some of the differences are just nomenclatures, differences in names. Okay. So you have shareholders who own a corporation, and you have members of a limited liability company. You have bylaws of a corporation, which do the governance of a company, and you have an operating agreement for an LLC. And they just sort of go on like that, but they're almost the same thing. But where it comes in, it's going to depend sometimes on taxation purposes. Do you want to be taxed as a C Corp, which is a very large corporation, which is taxed at the corporate company level and also the shareholder level? Do you want to be taxed as an S corporation, which is a small business election, and the company isn't taxed, but it flows down through to the shareholder, and that gets onto their individual tax return as a schedule. But more importantly, I think some of the major distinctions between the corporation and the LLC come down to some of the formalities,
Okay.
and sometimes who can be a member. All right. So, for example, an LLC, limited liability company, has been around since the 50s, but they didn't get popular until 1997 when the IRS finally gave them some credence, some justification. They said, you know what, we're going to recognize limited liability companies and allow for them. Okay. Now, when they did that, that basically took away partnerships. You almost rarely do partnerships. You still do in some cases in certain circumstances, but for the most part, limited liability companies replaced partnerships because now you have protection. But what it also did was it took away some of the formalities that were no longer required. You could run your company as a mom and pop shop, as they would say. You didn't have to have meetings and minutes. You didn't have to have documents in place and whatnot. Okay, well, if you didn't have to have minutes, you didn't have to have meetings and documents, my suggestion would be do them anyway. Because if you didn't, then we might pierce that corporate veil because we'd say, well, you know, this is their alter ego again. So the more formalities you have, the better. But oftentimes where it comes in, there's also some other significant, in fact, last week, I was advising some clients on this too. With a corporation, if I own 10% of the company, I am entitled to 10% of the profits and losses. I might own 10% of an LLC, but I might be able to get 50% of the profits and losses. So they don't have to be equal in a limited liability company. And sometimes that's very, very important, especially if I'm bringing in an investor. You know, I might be doing, you know, I might be putting in what's called sweat equity, where I'm there day to day running it, but I don't have the money to start it. So I give someone else a percentage of the company. Maybe I give them 20%, maybe I give them 49%, so I can still keep control with my 51%, but I'm going to give them 75% of the profit because without them, I didn't have anything. Sure, I only get 25%, but maybe I could, accumulate that money and then start my own without a partner later. So LLCs they do have their differences. All right. They don't have to be the same as a corporation, but oftentimes they're run very much the same way. But there are instances when an LLC is better. And, some companies, depending, not companies, but corporations, you might not be able to have a foreign national be a part of your company. All right. It might have to be a U.S. citizen in certain circumstances. So there you might have to be a C corporation. It just sort of depends. Or you might be back to the limited liability company as well. But there are differences, and choosing the right one does make a difference. And that is where you definitely want to speak with a lawyer. Many times, again, they are the same, but there might be some specific instances that person needs to benefit from one or the other.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And
Great question.
I have another question too, that is, for a small business just starting, what type of intellectual property should they protect first? Like, which one is the most important one?
Well, that just sort of depends. Of course, it depends on the business. So, like, if you are um, writing, as an example. You might need your small business. You might be a copywriter for somebody, so you need copyright information, right? You might be an artist out there. You might need trademark protection. Or if you're starting, with an investment an invention, and you want to protect that, you might need a patent. So it's not so much which one is first. You kind of want to protect them all. It just sort of depends on which one you're using.
Okay.
Which one is important to you or to that business, and then protect them all. And even if it's not a brand new invention, you still may want to have your employees sign a confidentiality agreement, because they might know your pricing, right? They might know your marketing strategy. And while that's not a trademark or a patent, those are still your company's trade secrets. And again, going back to my information there, where I might say, we might charge $20 a pound for X, Y, and Z. And you come out and say, hey, let's just charge them $15 a pound, because I know that they're charging 20. We won't make as much, but we'll get the business. And later on, we can, raise it later. So you sometimes see that. So protect it early. And even if you think you don't have something to protect, again, you might have your trade secrets to protect. So your confidential information is important just as much as patents and such.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay.
You're full of good questions.
Yeah, I think we have time for one or two more questions.
Awesome.
Okay. I have a question.
All right.
So with the knowledge of AI potentially taking over, how can a future lawyer stand out while competing with the current job market and AI?
Oh, well, that's a really good question. Well, I'll tell you, oddly enough, learning the AI tools are going to help you, right? Because you got to stay competitive, which is what you're asking. I think that's probably number one, is learning how to use those AI tools, because the more productive you can be and better at it, the more of a resource you're going to be, right? So whichever perspective you look at it from, one of you is going to be the extension of the other. Either you're the extension of the AI, or the AI is extension of the current lawyers, right? Because AI is learning from our databases, and they can learn a lot faster than we can. So they can, AI is becoming people, it feels like sometimes, right? But one of us is an extension of the other. But the more that you could use the AI's tools to become better at it, the more you're going to be sought after by firms, I would say, more than anything, and clients, because clients want quick turnaround always as well. And then I think it's just going to matter of how the landscape's going to change. I really do think the number one thing is going to be learning the AI tools. Don't ignore them. I think, the fact that you're in school, I think it's probably somewhat becoming more required. It's become part of the curriculum to learn AI, and it's based, however AI has been here a lot longer than we think it has. We're just calling it AI. They're just search engines, except they're starting to think a little bit better. They're faster. So search engines have always been there with Lexis and Westlaw and others, right? So now they're just more advanced. You need to be more advanced. And while I think they're going to take over the jobs out there, I read an article where former Google exec said, hey, doctors and lawyers, it takes so long to learn and go through all this stuff, AI is going to supplant you in that time. It'll catch up. I think that there's truth in that, but I don't think it's 100% truthful. Okay. And I think that there's always going to be a need for it. I just think the best way is to really learn AI, which is, Sun Tzu said, if you know your enemy, you know yourself. You'll be able to combat both, right? And win any battle there is. So learn AI and do the best you can. It's a great question. It's just, I don't have a good answer for you, but It's
Yeah.
scary.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I wish you the best, though. I do. I do. It can be very rewarding. Being a lawyer is very tough. It's sometimes fun, sometimes it's not fun. They make these TV shows for a reason about lawyers because it is fun, sometimes sexy, and sometimes so not sexy. So you really want to enjoy it. So I do wish you the best. And it's good to see that you have the passion for it. Good for you.
Okay, amazing. These are all great questions. Are there any more questions before we can go ahead and close out?
Yeah, I actually have a question. I
Great.
was kind of wondering, so when starting up a business, I feel like most businesses will need a lot of equipment like cars, trucks, machinery.
Yep, sure.
And I know you can get a lot of those things tax exempt. And I was kind of wondering, what is would you recommend hiring a lawyer to make sure you don't get in trouble for anything like that? Because I'm sure there's lines you can draw.
Yeah, well, I can't speak to the tax exempt portion, right? But you are right. Not all businesses need equipment, right? It just sort of depends on, you could be gangbuster accountant out there and only need a laptop, right? For the most part. But you might have other businesses that definitely have trucks, machinery, equipment in the back, any untold things. So yeah, definitely do so and seek out that lawyer, because I'll tell you this, we see it a lot where one person's traveling around from one place to another and they might have set up their LLC to protect them. Fantastic. But their car is in their individual name. Now they got into a car accident going from one place to another, and I'm suing that person's title holder. So now I'm going after them personally again. So I try to get my clients to get proper insurance, proper insurance for the business, outside of their own automobile insurance, but also get business insurance. Get an umbrella policy, which are dirt cheap, but get an umbrella policy. Make sure that the leases for the equipment sometimes are in the business name. You also, whenever possible, you want to stay away from personal guarantees for that equipment, right? Few people go into a business wanting it to fail. There's some weird circumstances where it could still happen, when people want it to fail. Maybe they want a loss. Okay, that's up to them. But most people don't go into a business thinking it's going to fail, right? So they don't plan for those eventualities, which sometimes do happen through no fault of their own. It could be the industry tanked. There could be tariffs that just came out of nowhere. How many people expected COVID-19 to come around and then, steel, wood, and all these other construction supplies go through the roof? And now they can't afford to do business anymore. Yet the leases for their equipment that you're speaking of and other things, or the loans are in their individual name where they have personal guarantees. Sometimes you can't avoid a personal guarantee with a loan, sometimes with a lease, but if you can negotiate it out, absolutely. So I would think talking with a lawyer to go through your equipment list or ideas is very, very important. Your question had actually a couple layers to it, even the tax exempt. Sometimes that's important too, though, because some cities will or states will say, if you bring your business to us, we'll give you these tax exemptions. We'll give you these incentives, maybe a break, whatever it may be. And their having some local knowledge is very important. So seeking out a lawyer in that case is also a good idea.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it from that perspective. Like, I'm sure certain states offer more benefits than others do. That's something certainly to look.
Yeah, absolutely. All the time, especially like with like property too, because the whole construct of the law is that we want stuff to be in use. We talk about bankruptcy, and this is, getting a little off topic here, but we talk about bankruptcy and everyone thinks it's so terrible. Things happen in life throughout, again, that we can't control, and we build up this debt. Bankruptcy is there not to punish you, not to put a mark on you and make you feel shameful. It's actually to make you productive again. It's actually to get you back into the workplace and to stimulate the economy. And so bankruptcy is not a bad thing, but I bring that up just to say that we want business to be stimulated. We want property to be used, and the state, if they can take like a local building. You see this throughout North Carolina a lot, where we have these old mills where it used to be textile. Okay, great, but no one's using them anymore. Well, now they're turned into breweries, they're turned into malls, pickleball courts, all sorts of different things, because we want them to be used. And so they give you incentives to come on in. So absolutely talk with the counties, talk with the states, and talk with lawyers who are in that field. And you can muster up more help. Now, if you don't ask for it, no one's ever going to give it to you. Sometimes you can go, all I can do is say no, right? So definitely ask and seek out that help.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. Good question. All good questions.
Amazing. If there's no other questions, I think we can go ahead and close out for today. Thank you again so much, Mr. Helfing, for agreeing.
My pleasure, Elizabeth.
This is super helpful, and definitely very educational for everyone, I'm sure.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
I really appreciated helping everybody, and thanks so much, Elizabeth, for being a part of your company and in this presentation. Right to Thrive, I think it's a fantastic organization, and I'm happy to hear there's a lot of aspiring business owners and lawyers here. So keep at it. Definitely keep learning. And if you ever have any questions, please feel free to contact me or someone else I'm happy to help you. All
Amazing.
right.
Thank you so much. All right.
Thanks so much. All right. Take care, everybody. You have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.